Welcome into the Russ Joy Show. Oh, we already have camera issues to start the show. Hold on. We're going to re-rack. I think we're going to re-rack the whole show. I think we're going to. I think it's the only thing to do. All right. No, we're good. We're good. We're back. Hello. Welcome in to the Russ Joy Show. No, screw it. We're re-racking. We'll do it live. Phillies game is a disaster right now. We'll do it live. Re-rack. Welcome into the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. You figured that out because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. So much to get into. Did I forget today that the Phillies had an afternoon game? Indeed, I did. But that doesn't matter. Because what does matter is that the Phillies, I called it a disaster. They have tied the game. But things aren't exactly looking rosy in Phillies land. And after yesterday's game, there were more and more conversations about whether or not young Rob Thomson, a.k.a. Lyndon B. Johnson, seriously, look it up. They're the same person. Whether or not Rob Thomson was really on the hot seat or not. Now, obviously, there are some Philadelphia media personalities out there who were calling for Rob Thomson's job and have been for a little bit now. I don't know, due in part to the fact that it doesn't appear as though there are any adjustments being made within games. Like, who the hell knows, right? People get upset about everything. I will point out really quickly that if you're a Phillies fan, there has not been a lot to enjoy of late, most notably dropping the first two games in a Mets series that, listen, they're not critical games right now, right? Like, losing games in April kind of is what it is. But we talked about this on Monday. The games matter just as much now as they do in September. The only difference is the momentum factor. But you piss away the opportunity to compete in close games against division rivals that are probably going to be there battling with you at the end of the season. Losing those games now really does hurt you. It hurts you just as much as it does in the fall. And so I get it. I get why so many Phillies fans are worked up and are upset about the fact that the team has dropped two straight games to the godforsaken Mets after blowing a very winnable game in the series finale, in the series against the Marlins. That came after, Jordan, not Jay, not Ray Romano, Jordan Romano came in and gave up 6 runs last Saturday against the Marlins. Like, I get it. This team is not in the midst of a very good run at all. It is a time that you can be, and I would even argue probably should be frustrated with the Phillies. And yet, if you put out any kind of tweet that is remotely critical of this team, if you put out, I don't know, something on TikTok or over on Instagram Reels or Facebook Reels or YouTube Shorts, there are people that are still willing to make some excuses for this Phillies team. But the big thing is you get a lot of people who go out of their way and they say things to the effect of, oh, well, you have to wait. It's only April. They're not that far into the season. I don't know if you know this or not, but they're only 24 games into the season. Right now, they're playing in their 25th game of the season. And, well, you just have to let everything play out. Just got to just figure it out, guys. You can't be critical of this team. At what point are we allowed to be critical? Like, at what point do you get smacked in the face with how bad this bullpen is? How many times do you need to get whacked upside the head before you say, you know what, now's a fair time? Like, do those people want us to wait until the trade deadline? Do they want us to wait until the All-Star game? Do we wait until mid-May? Do we wait till the end of May? Is the beginning of June acceptable? Like, at what point are you allowed to be critical? Because the bullpen sucks. And the bullpen got blown up again yesterday. It got blown up as bad as my diet did over Easter weekend. And there was a lot of kielbasa in this house. Hint, hint. Russ didn't eat particularly healthy this weekend. Okay? So, I'm sorry. I'm not going to, stand here and, go totally hyperbolic and tell you that the season's over for the Phillies and that them being 13-11 entering Wednesday afternoon's game is the end of days and they may as well fold the team. But, like, there are more than enough concerning trends here, especially with the bullpen. This doesn't even address the lineup, which we'll get to in a little bit. But, like, Chris, here's, like, set the stage from Tuesday, right? Christopher Sanchez on the mound. A guy that, like, for about a year now, I've said, really like Christopher Sanchez. Really appreciate what Christopher Sanchez is. I do often go back to the thought that, like, they thought Christopher Sanchez was going to be like a number 4 pitcher. Last year, he pitched like a number 2, gets rewarded, does well, gets put in a really nice spot in this very strong rotation to start the season. But I kept saying, like, yo, you got to be really careful because if anything goes sideways with any of these starters, you don't have the depth that you want to have. Like, we never wanted to see Taijuan Walker in the rotation. He had a couple of strong starts. He started feeling a little bit better. You look at the, I don't know, like later in the season when Andrew Painter maybe gets the call up and you figure, all right, like there's a potential path to having a nice strong rotation that even has like your organization's best prospect in that rotation later in the season. Cool. Jesus Luzardo, you hope is going to look like a legit like number 2, maybe a number 3. He's looked very good. But I said like they don't have the organizational depth right now to be able to withstand an injury or two to this rotation. Well, Ranger Suarez injured on his way back, but injured to start the year. Now Christopher Sanchez leaves the game Tuesday with forearm tightness, which is not a great sign. I'm not saying that means it's the end of days for him either, but sometimes a forearm tightness becomes a forearm strain. Forearm strain kind of portends the potential of there being like a Tommy John issue. Not always, but sometimes. So you worry about that injury, and you worry about it because so much of this rotation was kind of predicated on Christopher Sanchez having another really strong year. And if he's out, like let's just hypothesize for a second that Christopher Sanchez misses a few starts. God forbid, has to get Tommy John. Who's supposed to take the spot in this rotation? Because Ranger Suarez can't stay healthy. You don't want to hand the ball to Taijuan Walker. Aaron Nola's a fucking disaster this year. Legitimate disaster. Okay? Even the biggest Aaron Nola fanboys, and I know a few, even those people have to sit back and say, yeah, it's not been a great start to the year for Aaron Nola. I mean, you're like, that's 3 parts of your rotation that you were hoping to rely on. Suarez can't stay healthy. Sanchez is hurt, hopefully not severely. Nola's a disaster. Zach Wheeler is doing everything he can, but in fairness, he's only one guy, and he's going to have a bad start every now and then. He's going to make a mistake every once in a while. Like, that kind of is what it is. Jesus Luzardo, is that supposed to be the guy that's going to hold the whole thing together? He's only one guy as well. So if all these things kind of like play out the way that it appears they are, if Suarez is going to be in and out, if Sanchez is going to be out, if Nola is going to be a head case, then you have 2 starters in a 5-man rotation. That's not ideal. That's not good at all. And that doesn't even begin to touch on the absolute shit show that this bullpen continues to be. You go back to Tuesday. All right, Christopher Sanchez comes out. 2 innings pitched. You go, all right, this is bad. We know that in a game like that, no one is ready to go out and to step in that early in a game. Yes, you're getting paid money to go out and try to be maybe a long relief guy, maybe go out there in a situation that you don't expect to, but bullpen guys are supposed to be, somewhat mentally prepared. So you get Joe Ross goes out, has 3 strong-ish innings, nothing to really complain much about. No runs get scored. You're feeling okay. He was able to kind of stem the tide. You got through the first 5 innings. In fairness, these starters have been able to get through 5 innings with relative consistency, and then it gets you to the bullpen, and then you go, all right, what's going to happen next? So Jay Romano comes out. He does okay. Not perfect. He does okay. You say, all right, now we're through 6. There's only 3 innings left. Maybe we have a chance to get back into this game. Maybe we have a chance to level the series at a game apiece. Tanner Banks comes in, gives up a run in 2/3 of an inning. Kirkering comes in, gives up 2 more runs in 1/3 of an inning. And at that point, it's over. At that point, the Mets have gotten their 5 runs across, and you say, I think, sir and or madam, paying attention to the game, we are screwed. And the thing that made it even worse, right? The thing that makes it even more confounding, and the thing that makes it even more perplexing when you look at what this team is supposed to be built on, which is, in part, a strong heart of the order. Maybe not top to bottom, the best lineup in baseball, but one that's certainly supposed to be able to give you more than one run. The Phillies scored a run in the second inning, and then the bats just went silent. You get nothing across. And then you fast forward to the game that's going on right now. Phillies failed to capitalize early in this one. And again, as of doing the show, for the people who are going to listen after the fact, you're going to watch after the fact on YouTube, like, they're right now in the middle of the fifth inning, right? The Mets are about to come up to bat. The Phillies plated 2 runs in the fourth inning. Hooray. They had bases loaded earlier in the game. Couldn't convert. Not good. Not ideal. And you're now in a situation where in this game, Zach Wheeler hasn't been exactly the guy that you're used to seeing. And he made a mistake, and it ends up getting deposited into the seats. Not ideal. Now, do I think Zach Wheeler's like done for the day? No. Do I think Zach Wheeler could maybe get you another inning or two? Sure. But then you have to give the ball to this bullpen, and there's been nothing redeemable in this bullpen this season. There is not a single guy that you can give the ball to right now and feel with confidence is going to be able to get you through a full inning. Maybe Alvarado. Maybe. Is there anyone else? Are there any reinforcements coming? How many times are we going to go live on this show and have a conversation about the bullpen before Timu.com Mr. Rogers, a.k.a. Dave Dombrowski, says, oh yeah, I guess we might need a bullpen arm, huh? I guess we might have to address this thing that I didn't address in the offseason. Yeah. Okay, maybe. And I mean, listen, call it redundant. And to some extent, some of these points are going to become redundant because until they're fixed, it's not going to matter. Until they're fixed, it's going to continue to be a problem. The Phillies bats have this weird propensity for going cold all at the same time. You don't have guys on this team that just consistently get on base and consistently perform. It's like they ride this wave of momentum. They can put up a crooked number or two, and then the bats pretty much do nothing. They fall behind in a game. You get late into the game. You're seeing very few pitches in the 8th or 9th inning, and the game is effectively over. While on the other side, your bullpen is dishing up, serving up batting practice to the opposition. It's a very frustrating time. And listen, when we went through this offseason together, I said that I thought it was really alarming that they didn't do anything to try to find a slump-proof hitter. I certainly wanted to see them go after a dynamic or a big-time bat in the offseason. They did not do that. They reportedly shopped Alec Boehm. There were no takers, at least with a serious offer. They apparently shopped Nick Castellanos. That also netted them no results, no deals. And oh, by the way, arguably their most important hitter right now or thus far through the season has been Kyle Schwarber, and he's not under contract beyond this season. So you put all those things together, and it's kind of understandable why people are a little bit frustrated with where things are at right now. And that's not even being hyperbolic. I could have come here and said, Rob Thomson's on the hot seat. If Rob Thomson can't get these guys to do better at the plate, to show more discipline late in games, to get a few runs across the plate in the 8th and 9th inning, they got to be fired. Or to say, oh, you know what? Rob Thomson clearly doesn't have the pulse of this bullpen. Time to cut bait. I'm not there. I'm not going to yell it. I'm not going to scream. I'm not going to do it just for funsies. But there are some concerns. There are some concerns with at least some issues that we saw in the second half of last season into the postseason kind of rearing their ugly heads again. And to me, that is a concern. Now, this bullpen is something that I cannot put on a manager. I don't know who to put it on. I know that often we try to find somebody to blame. It's kind of easy nowadays to try to find somebody to blame. It's like one of the things that we do by default. But I can't say that this bullpen is Rob Thomson's fault. Have there been times that he's pulled a starter too early? Maybe. Have there been times where he's made a questionable call and let somebody out a little bit longer than they should have been? Sure. But again, there are so few people right now that you can hand the ball to with any kind of confidence that, if every bullpen arm is going to just puke all over themselves, what's Rob Thomson supposed to do? What would Joe Girardi have been able to do? What would Gabe Kapler have been able to do? What would Charlie Manuel or Ryan Sandberg or Larry Bull? What would any of them have been able to do? Nothing. Bullpen's a disaster. But at some point, it does come down to the players actually being able to get into their, like the bullpen has to get in their own heads. They got to get themselves out of those heads, and they've got to figure out how to pitch again, because you made it to the major leagues. You've gotten paid good sums of money because you're good at this thing. Some of them have to be able to figure it out. This entire bullpen can't just be total shit the rest of the year, can it? And if they are, I will once again point out, it then falls on the front office to go out and get some new arms in here. Because if you're going to keep rolling this out and we get another week or two of this and you start to fall further and further behind the Mets, it is an issue. And if you were to fall in today's game, it would also be concerning. Right now, it's a four-game gap between the Phillies and the Mets. You were hoping that you were going to be able to get rid of the lead entirely, maybe even take the lead for yourself. So far, you have fallen 2 further games behind the Mets. If you lose today, you will have gotten swept and you will have fallen 3 more games back, and then you'd be sitting at 5 back. That's not good. The Mets clowned you last year. The Mets clowned you in the playoffs. They made you their bitch in the playoffs. And in this series, so far, they've kind of made the Phillies their bitch again. Now, we don't have the benefit of this show going long enough to carry us through the entire game. So maybe by the time the show posts to podcast feeds and people get around to watching it, maybe the Phillies will have staged some kind of a real big balls comeback. And Bryce Harper hits a grand slam. Or maybe Kyle Schwarber deposits one into the upper deck in right field. And then, I don't know, has a big balls moment at the plate. I don't know. But again, like, there are some concerning issues, and it doesn't seem like they've done anything to fix it to this point. So that's where I'm at on the Phils. I'm going to go out to the comments. We have a couple of Flyers things to talk about. One is positive, one is certainly not. And then, I don't know if you know this or not, but the Eagles, there's a draft coming up, and some interesting quotes floating around about the Eagles going into this draft. We're going to get there in a second. Flyers Forever over on X says, oh my God, the Phillies facepalm. Difficult to watch them right now. Ford says, so basically the Phillies bullpen sucks, which we knew, and it still does, and their situational hitting, men in scoring position sucks, which we knew, rinse and repeat, and then says, Phils will win games if they have one of those 9-run hot games or a pitching gem. They'll finish slightly over 500. By the way, Braves only 3.5 behind the Phils now, even with their horrible start. Yeah, that's an issue. It's a legitimate problem. This is a division that, listen, you're not going to win the division in April, but you could put a big enough gap that it makes it really hard. And right now, the Mets, by virtue of what they've done against the Phillies through 2 games, you want to call it 2.5 at this point, they're creating a big enough gap for them to feel a little bit more comfortable going into the month of May. It's not an insurmountable lead. I mean, even with how bad the Braves started, the Braves are 7.5 back of the Mets. That is over the course of 130-something games. That is a hill that you can certainly climb. The Braves could certainly get back into this division. There was a really funny quote post-game yesterday where John Kruk gets asked by Barkham, because Barkham was doing the carnival barker thing that he's done ever since he got the blue glasses, about whether or not the Phillies can get themselves back into this. And Kruk goes, yeah, I don't know. How are they going to make up a 3-game lead with 130 games, with the season winding down the way that it is? It is kind of insane to get so worked up after every game. But you'll notice, I don't get worked up after every game. I do get more worked up when we see the same issues popping up series in and series out, and you're watching a bullpen just continue to squander away, in some cases, what should be wins, squander away what should be insurmountable leads, see the one game against the Marlins, and squander away the opportunity for you to even get back into a game. And so while the bullpen's doing that, and the lineup, conversely, is also not getting it done at the plate, you're going to start to lose some games that should be winnable. The Mets should not have a 4-game lead on the Phillies right now. They should probably be about even if you take all things into account. And if this bullpen weren't such a goddamn disaster, and if this lineup just didn't have this habit of going cold altogether and putting together really shitty at-bats in the same inning, you're probably dead even with the Mets. Instead, you're 4 games back. Let's see. Zach O says, oh, yes, another afternoon show. We are here. Josh White says, goodness, this bullpen is atrocious. Indeed, it is. Andrew Fawcett, noting about Aaron Nola, says Nola is terrible. That is correct. Let's see. JH says, I was out on Rob when he didn't leave the dugout to even show he gave a wet fart about the guys in the NLDS last year. He's like very cool, calm, and Canadian. And sometimes cool, calm, and Canadian doesn't get it done. At some point, homeboy's got to show a little bit of emotion. I don't know when it'll happen. Maybe he's like saving that up. Maybe he's like hulking up. Maybe the whole time he's just been hulking up. And the Phillies are going to get to like September, October, and he's going to do the you, brother, and he's going to deliver a big boot and a leg drop. I don't think it's going to happen, but maybe. Maybe. Chris Freed says, the Mets are the Phillies' daddy, and I refuse to discuss what Mr. Met does with the fanatic after wins. I don't know. I don't know what JH is referring to about a chip. He says about the chip man. I don't know what the chip man is. JH, you have to elaborate. I'm not sure what that means. Let's see. There's something that Chris also brought up. It's a Flyers related point. Well, sort of Flyers related. We'll get there in a little bit. Jim Cochran says it's not surprising given the offseason they had. People that are surprised are the same people that were surprised Paul George and Embiid were hurt all year. I mean, listen, it was an underwhelming offseason if you were a Phillies fan. It was an underwhelming offseason if you were being fair and if you were being honest about what we saw. It was an underwhelming offseason. They still have time. It's still very early in the season, but holy shit. Let's see. Raymond Supper says, could turn into a hard sell at the deadline. I don't see a scenario where that one plays out. I don't think the Phillies are going to turn into a seller. Amadeo says, I actually think Rob is the least to blame this season. He's changed the lineup multiple times. He has no control of who's in the pen. I tend to agree there. I do. Let's see. Amadeo also says there are people in triple and double A that have 10 times better numbers than 80% of our pen right now. Correct. JH was calling Aaron Nola the Chip Man. Says that he is on the Hers ads. Chip Man sucks dookie. That the shame is too. Aaron Nola, I think, was the first pro athlete that was like sponsored by Yuengling. You know, the beer from my hometown, the lifeblood of Schuylkill County, Yuengling Brewery. And I was like, oh, cool. Yuengling got an athlete. That's awesome. Aaron Nola? Okay. And then Aaron Nola turned into dog doo-doo. So that's not encouraging. That's not great. Not happy about that. Now, something that other people are not happy about, apparently, is having to deal with Howie Roseman. Now, I'm not going to do some kind of like long diatribe here, okay, about potential targets in the first round of the NFL draft. Not doing it. Not going to fake it. Not going to act like I watched a million college football games this year. Not going to act like I sat down and I broke down a ton of film. I think I will bring somebody onto the show either Friday or next Monday to recap the draft and give you some more insight as viewers and listeners of the show about who the Eagles went after and why. Now, I will note that Howie Roseman might have a little bit of a harder time having fun taking advantage of other teams in the draft. And I'm actually going to throw out to a quote from Adam Schefter from this morning on the 97.5 morning show with Salchunas and Kincaid, because I thought this was an absolutely mind-blowing quote. And at the same time, I'm not surprised by it at all. So you have to remember, Howie Roseman has now built up this reputation among fans as being a guy who gets the better of trades and gets the better of a lot of other front offices, so much so that even as a fan of the team, you might ask yourself a few times, why is it that teams are willing to trade with Howie Roseman? Well, Schefter goes on to the 97.5 morning show and says the following. He says to the hosts, last week you asked if there are teams scared of doing business with the Eagles and Howie Roseman, and I, Schefter, said no. They're going to call. They won't shy away from it. But I will say this. They are mindful of his track record because I did have one GM say to me this week, and this guy was talking about moving up, moving back, and Philly came up, and the guy jokes to me, Yeah, we're blocking all calls from the 215 area code into our facility. Now, I know that that's likely in jest, right? I know that a good front office executive isn't going to block the calls of a GM. You're not going to do that, even if you don't want to work with that GM, or even if you're worried about being on the ultimately what is seen as a bad side of a trade with Howie Roseman. But you have to think, ego is involved. Like, if you are a fan right now who's like, I don't think GMs have egos. I don't think presidents of respective sports teams have egos. I don't think that they would allow that to get in the way of making a good deal or good business. Oh no, I can tell you for sure that front office executives do in fact have some ego. And in fairness, they should. Because while players are able to get to the highest level and get paid a lot of money, get paid boku bucks to go out and perform on the field, on the court, on the ice, front office executives do the same thing. They work their way up. They get to one of these very finite number of jobs, and they try to do whatever they can to hang on to those jobs. And so if you have watched Howie Roseman school some of your contemporaries, your colleagues, maybe even your team in trades, and somehow find the value of a Quinyon Mitchell or a Cooper DeJean last year, you might not want to be the person who could potentially end up on the wrong side of a Howie Roseman trade. Now, there might be some people whose ego works the other way and says, I'm going to get Howie. I'm actually going to one-up Howie Roseman and prove my legitimacy as a GM of an NFL team. And maybe you'll have somebody who ends up making a really bad deal trying to one-up Howie. Maybe. Who knows? But, like, the Eagles have had a lot of success. There is a possibility that there aren't going to be as many teams willing to make a deal with Howie. Now, does that make Howie Roseman's job exponentially harder on draft day? No, probably not. And the reason is simple. If you're Howie Roseman, do you really need to make a pick at the end of the first round? Probably not. Is the pick that you end up using, if you use the final pick in the first round to take a player, is that guy going to come in and necessarily be a difference maker to your team next season? Probably not, although the Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean stuff still kind of boggles my mind. It really does. The fact that those guys were able to come in and make as big of an impact as they did from Jump Street last season, I don't know. Maybe the final pick of the first round ends up becoming something of value as a rookie. I don't know. But, like, could we see a scenario where Howie moves out of the first round entirely? Maybe punts that first round pick into a first round pick next year, or perhaps punts this first round pick and picks up more draft capital later on in the draft, and then maybe moves back up into the second round. They do this little evaluation, or they do a lot of these teams have the value charts of what the value of a pick is, and if you can get back up, and you're watching a guy falling on your board, and then you go, all right, well, we have some extra picks here. We'll package those together. We'll move back up into the second round somewhere else and get another guy. And then you feel like on aggregate, the two people that you picked in the second round are actually more valuable than if you had picked in the first round and whatever that second round player would have been. There are teams that are going to do that, and they do that internal calculus, right? They do. And to Howie's credit, he's done a very good job of building Super Bowl caliber teams and a Super Bowl winning team. Now, what are the Eagles going to target in the draft? You would assume that they're probably going to look for at least one edge rusher. I would like to see them address the linebacking position. Ideally, I'd like to see them walk away with a linebacker a little bit higher in this draft. Do they need to go after a safety? Not so sure. Offensive line help, you're always looking for. Could they look to make a splash for a tight end, especially since it seems to be no secret that the days of Dallas Goedert being on this team may be numbered? Could they look for a tight end? Maybe. I don't exactly expect the Eagles to move up in the first round. Like, I don't know what they'd be willing to part with to move up to, I don't know, like you're trying to get up to like 24, 25. Listen, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. I just think it's more likely that Howie moves back in this draft. That would be my guess. I could be wrong. I don't see them making a splash. I certainly don't see Howie Roseman doing the ridiculous thing that one radio host from WEEI up in Boston floated, that, oh, well, the Eagles might trade A.J. Brown if Abdul Carter is still available when the Patriots go to pick, and that's going to be the deal. Like, no, that's not happening. Stop. Get some help. Absolutely not. Will Howie try to make a move somewhere higher in I don't know. Does the real trade chip that you have, if you're Howie Roseman and you're trying to move up, maybe is Dallas Goedert. But there is the conversation about the cap hit, and there's going to be the conversation about whether or not a team wants to take that player on and then have to give him what will probably be a pretty lucrative deal to a tight end. And then you have teams having to evaluate, do we think that Dallas Goedert can be as good or even better in our system than he was with this Super Bowl winning Eagles team? So I don't actually know how much value Dallas Goedert has in terms of getting you up in the draft. I just don't see the Eagles getting very active. And I could be wrong. Maybe Friday, I hop on the show, I replay this little clip of this show, and I say, hey, total idiot here. And I'll take 100% accountability and tell you I was a total schmuck. If the Eagles somehow, for some reason, trade Devontae Smith or A.J. Brown to the Patriots to get Abdul Carter, I will come here on Friday. Maybe I'll even eat Bucky. You know what? If the Eagles go and they trade A.J. Brown to the Patriots for Abdul Carter, I will eat Bucky, the bobblehead, on this show Friday. Bucky, do you like that idea? Bucky says no. Bucky, do you think that they're going to trade A.J. Brown for Abdul Carter? Oh, you're unsure. Do you think it's a stupid conversation to have at all, even in principle? Oh, he does. He thinks it's stupid. Okay. I think Bucky's safe. Okay? By the way, don't worry. Amadeo, JH, don't worry. I'm not going to eat Bucky. It's not going to happen. It won't happen. Okay. That's where I'm at with the Eagles. This is like the least excited I've been for a draft in a while. Chris Freed says the hype or the mojo for this draft has been lacking nationally and locally. There's a reason for that. None of the quarterbacks coming out are viewed as like a generational talent. Shedeur Sanders might fall. That'll be an interesting one. Like if Shedeur Sanders falls, who's going to take him? And will he fall farther than Aaron Rodgers did? Like, is there a case here that Shedeur Sanders could maybe fall into like the teens? Could that happen? I don't know. It all depends on like if some of the reports that have come out, a front office executive saying that the Shedeur Sanders interview that they conducted was the most underwhelming and that he is like entitled and all. If that's true and he falls, I don't even know who would be an intriguing name. Like, does Dallas look to draft Shedeur Sanders at that point? Does Dallas then say, you know what, that's our QB of the future? I don't know. That to me might be the biggest story of the draft, but I have no clue. None at all. All right. That's the Eagles. Now, I have two Flyers related things that I want to get to. One of them is really uncomfortable, and then, I said uncomfortable, and then the gesture on the Mac sent balloons. All right, hold on, we're going to let that one breathe for a second. So there are two Flyers topics that we have to get to on the show. One is a former Flyer, and one is a current Flyer. Now, I will tell you, I am not going into detail about the bad one, okay? Because I'd have to like do the whole trigger warning thing, and like, man, some of the comments coming out from this trial already have been horrifically bad, okay? Flat out, it is really bad. Rick Westhead, who is the one that often reports on these things, often reports on like the most uncomfortable stories, but the ones that need to get reported on, he is covering this thing. The court case that includes accusations against Carter Hart and 4 other members of the 2018 Canada World Juniors team. The comments are horrible. The stuff that is coming out from this trial. There was a text that was released a little bit ago as part of the initial, the attorney representing Canada, representing the Crown, put out. It is bad, very bad. They have the accusations, at least like what has been kind of laid out about what each of those players have allegedly done or allegedly did on that fateful night. It's not good. The thing that I find concerning, can I have a moment as a human being here with all of you? The amount of people that if you search, let's just say, for example, if you search the name Carter Hart on Twitter right now, because he is the highest profile player that has been named and is now trying to defend himself. And, if it proves that these were salacious claims that had no merit and he's exonerated, he will probably look to play in the NHL again, as will any of these players look to resume their careers. And if they are not exonerated and they're found guilty, Carter Hart will be the one that'll be the name that'll be the most publicly and probably highly named on any kind of like verdict, right? Because he is the most, do we say he's like the most successful of the five when it comes to hockey accomplishments? It's bad. The thing that I find disgusting about it is if you just go on Twitter and you just search any of these players' names, but like let's just say Carter Hart because he's the most notable name. There are people right now and over the last 24 to 36 hours that have been tweeting about, hey, do you think that if Carter Hart gets exonerated, he can be in net in time for the Oilers if they make the Stanley Cup final? Or you're getting people saying, hey, he's going to be found innocent. Like, can he play for the Oilers next year? And then I saw somebody say, well, the worst karma thing that could happen to the Flyers is that Carter Hart gets found not guilty and then signs a long-term deal with the Devils. What the fuck are these people talking about? What is wrong with you? Like, listen, you can look at this however you want. If you want to look at it through the lens of everybody is innocent until proven guilty, which is what the law says, what Canadian law says, all that, that's fine. If you want to look through that lens or you want to look through it from the lens of like all these guys are guilty until they prove themselves innocent, which is not what the legal burden of proof that has to be reached is, you can certainly do that as well. Why would anybody at this point be actively commenting on the possibility, the potential availability of any of these players playing either this postseason or even next year? What are we doing? I saw a tweet going around, and I wish I could find it now. It would take too long. One of the players who's named in this lawsuit, in this like active trial now for sexual assault, one of the players played for the Devils, and there was somebody who showed up to the Devils playoff game of game 1 wearing that guy's jersey at the start of a trial. What the fuck is wrong with you? Seriously, what is wrong with you? Even if you're like, well, he's innocent until proven guilty. That's what you wear to the game. Seriously? And listen, I will, I guess, get in trouble here, but I will point out, JH says, people who let their kids wear, and he means Carter, but doesn't like Carter now, doesn't like Carter Hart, let their kids wear Carter jerseys to games. I was at the Flyers Carnival. I was shocked at the amount of kids in Carter Hart jerseys. Now, look, again, you could say innocent until proven guilty, and that's fine. The person is actively involved in a trial around assault. I'm not exactly sure I'd be like taking that jersey out of the closet and putting it on my kid. If my kid wanted to put that jersey on, I'd be like, you know what? I think we're going to get you an Ivan Fedotov jersey. There's not high demand for it, but it'll be kind of ironic someday. I'd be more apt to taking the name and the number off of the jersey and letting my kid wear that. And again, innocent until proven guilty. That is fine. If you want to look at it from that, it's a legitimate case being made. Why would you do that? Why? What am I missing? What is the value add? What is the upside? What am I missing? No, I was shocked. I was honestly shocked at the carnival with the amount of kids wearing Carter Hart jerseys. I was shocked to some extent seeing it during the season, people just in the stands. You can support a player. You certainly, watching or listening to the show, can support those 5 players and say that they're all innocent until proven guilty, and that's fine. That is your prerogative. Would I actively wear their jerseys to games? No. I cannot understand why anybody would. Now you get exonerated, player gets exonerated, you want to wear that jersey? That's still up to you. We'll see how it plays out. The expectation is that this case could take weeks, if not months, just based on some of the stuff that has already come out today that Rick Westhead has been tweeting out and has been getting tweeted out. This feels like it is going to be a lengthy trial, and it is going to feel really, really gross, and it is going to trigger people who have been affected by this stuff in the past. And so I'm not going to break it down in detail, and if we do cover it at some point on a future episode, I will certainly go out of my way to give people, it's not just people who've been affected by it, but like people who do listen to this show that have kids in the car or whatever. I want to be careful But it's serious, and the allegations are serious. And again, these people have the opportunity to make their case that they're innocent. The plaintiff has the opportunity to make the case that they're guilty. All of that. But man, like wearing the jerseys, wild, crazy. I don't know what we're doing. JH says, I stripped my jersey last year and got Michkov on it. Alex D says, it's people who just don't care because it doesn't directly affect them, and they also want to get a rise out of the public. That's why I say, though, like the kids in the jerseys, that's the thing that honestly kind of blows my mind. Like, why? And if this is like where as a parent, you also kind of have to step in. Like, if it is a thing where your kid's like, well, you know, that player was my kid's favorite player. You don't need to tell them what the accusations are. You don't need to tell them about the case and the horrific nature and all that. You say, we're not going to do that. We're going to get you a new jersey. You can't afford a new jersey? I'm pretty sure. I'd have to double check. I thought that there was an exchange program to like hand in the jersey and get a new one. I could be wrong. I thought that was a thing for a little bit. I might actually look and see if there are organizations or if there are stores that are kind of offering to do the switch. Maybe even like just for kids' jerseys. I might actually do a little bit of research into it because I just find it kind of shocking. Now, that is story number one that had to do with, clearly a former Flyer. I saw that there were a couple of questions about other things with hockey, and then I want to get to what I found to be very interesting, not shocking, but interesting comments about Matvei Michkov about John Tortorella. So that's where we're going to wrap up the show. Let me see. There was a question early in the show, and it was, somebody said like random, here we go. Zacho said, random Flyers question. If the Flyers go after a free agent center this year, would it be smarter to go after an older vet for 2 to 3 years or a young player for 6+ years? Example, Tavares versus McTavish. I think you have to decide if it's the latter. If it's a younger player on a 6+ year deal, you had better be sure that that guy has number 1C upside. If it's number 2 upside, you don't do that. I'm not opposed to the idea of a 2 to 3 year player. In fact, if Tavares were available, does he represent an immediate upgrade here? Yes. Would I be fine with Tavares being the guy that kind of takes Matvei Michkov under his wing and tries to get the most out of him? I would. I might be more apt to saying 2 to 3 years with a veteran player who, by the way, has a higher floor, we'll say. The ceiling doesn't matter as much. Has a higher floor than most of the players do on this team right now, most of the centers do on this team. I don't need somebody to have the Connor McDavid ceiling. I need somebody to have the floor of being, at the very least, a 1C on just about any team. That's the kind of guy that you go after for a few-year deal, even if he's towards the latter part of his career. I'm not saying go out and sign like a 37-year-old to a 5-year deal. That's insane. Could I see them giving a guy who maybe has 2 good productive years at like a high enough clip a contract that maybe is a little bit higher on AAV, specifically to get the most out of Michkov? Yeah, I could see that. I think that totally is in play. I don't know what free agent is available going into this offseason that I think has like legitimate number 1C potential. I don't think it's there. Wyatt Johnston was the guy that I wanted them to go after in restricted free agency, and he re-signed in Dallas. So that dream died like a month ago. Other than that, I don't know. I don't really care. But it is a good question. Let's see. Vacant Alleyways over on YouTube says, I saw a dude at Chipotle the other night wearing a Hart jersey. I told him time to buy a new jersey. Luckily, I don't see it around Wells Fargo Center often. I did. Up in the balcony level, I saw it a decent amount. And walking into games, I still saw some. Again, totally your call as a human being or as a parent and all that, but let's see. JH says they should only trade for Tavares if he gives the team all magic amulets for free. By the way, this is interesting. Ford says, by the way, NBA playoffs have started. No Sixers. Jim Cochran says, no Sixers in the playoffs, but guess who is? James Harden, Ben Simmons, and Tobias Harris. I'll tell you that the optics of watching James Harden and Ben Simmons playing together is confounding. It is one of the things that, like, in one way kind of brings me joy, and in another just makes me kind of nauseous. Because, like, in fairness, the Clippers have had a chance in both games. Like, the Clippers could have been up 2-0 in this series. The game 1 went to overtime. And the Nuggets just kind of pulled away, ended up with just a 2-point win. But the Clippers could have won both games on the road. That series now moves back to LA. Game 3 is tomorrow. Game 3 is on Thursday. Yes. But the Clippers came back out in game 2, and they walked away with another narrow win. That Nuggets team, you have to remember, is a mess, right? That's the same team that with 5 days before the playoffs started decided to fire their coach and their GM. This is probably the most beatable the Nuggets have been. And if James Harden and Ben Simmons are in any way, shape, or form responsible for that Clippers team advancing and knocking out Nikola Jokic and that Denver Nuggets team, while Daryl Morey is still employed by this Philadelphia 76ers team, poetic, but also gross. Alex D also points out, and Jimmy Butler, yeah, because the Warriors, they continue to come out and play. And I think the Warriors actually have a legitimate chance of taking out the Rockets earlier in the playoffs than anyone thought they would. I'm not saying it's going to be a sweep. Could the Warriors win that series against Houston in 5 games? Yeah, they could. And Jimmy Butler has fundamentally changed everything about that team. So, yeah, it's not ideal. It's not a great thing if you're a Sixers fan. You're now watching all these former Sixers that Daryl Morey deemed not good enough, or, in fairness, that ownership or whoever was in the front office at the time, Elton Brand, Brett Brown, that Jimmy Butler wasn't worth keeping around. And now you're watching him go and find success in Golden State. It's very frustrating. These guys were all under your roof. Now, I'm not going to be upset about Tobias Harris, in fairness. Tobias Harris is, we're not doing that. Okay. Last thing I wanted to get to today. Matvei Michkov had some interesting things to say about John Tortorella. And it was a Russian language interview. No, I did not go and learn Russian in the past year. But Michkov had some really interesting things to say. And he talked about Tortorella and Tortorella's impact on his career. And I think that, listen, we had the understanding from the limited availability that there was around Michkov that the guy has legitimate killer instinct, has the desire to be great, has the desire to be better than anyone else on the ice, will bust his ass to win every game, even in games where his team just simply is not good enough to get it done. He is going to be a heart and soul kind of player for this team. And if all goes well, he could very likely go down as one of the best flyers in a generation to wear the orange and black. And none of that is really hyperbolic. He just put together a hell of a season that in many other seasons probably would have won him the Calder. He won't win it this year. But Michkov has been everything and more than advertised. And stands to reason could be even better next season. Entering a season at age 20, entering his second season in North America. But he will do it with a different head coach, unless the Flyers bring back Brad Shaw. Now, there were some interesting things that stood out from his interview about Tortorella. One of the things that he said, and this is Michkov telling, who was the person who conducted the interview? Wouldn't be fair here. So it was Nikita Filatov and Andrei Arshavin. So he does this interview in Russian, and Michkov says, quote, "When I was on my way here, Russian guys told me that he dislikes Russians and that he is a tough coach in general." And then he said, "When I arrived, he," meaning Tortorella, "always treated me with respect, and we found a mutual understanding. He tells you exactly what he thinks of you. If you're shit, he'll tell you you're shit. Some people don't like the hard truth, but he's a person who says what he thinks." We had heard prior to Michkov coming over that Michkov is kind of like a no-nonsense guy, and that he's somebody who doesn't mind being coached hard. And that Michkov kind of turned some heads when he was playing in Russia as being a guy who spoke up for himself and spoke up in the locker room, maybe more than a lot of veteran players were used to seeing a young guy do. So we view that largely as a positive. Here you have the confirmation that the coach coached him hard, but he appreciated the straightforward nature of the communication. Okay. He continues, Sitting here thinking about being benched, it seems to me that I benefited from it. When I come back to the bench, I'm a very hot-headed person. We had heard that before. And he's the same. Of course, when we were both riled up, it was difficult to find a common language, and we had a few misunderstandings. Okay. And then he said that he would say that they didn't really have conflicts. He said that when we would come back into the locker room, if he was wrong, he would say he was sorry and shouldn't have said some things. I would tell him I was sorry too and was wrong and riled up. I wanted to win, score, get assists on every shift. He said he understood me, that he liked people with big hearts who are passionate about the game. I liked him very much. So those were some of Michkov's comments. There was another one in here. Also noted that he thinks Tortorella is one of his best coaches. Said, of course, there were some unpleasant moments where he benched me and I didn't play, or I played 9 minutes. I sat there thinking, why is he here? Why is he benching me when I can score, I can pass? Then I got on the ice again, cooled off, and everything was fine. And then he said, that's why I was very upset when he was fired. I didn't want him to get fired. I wanted to work with him a bit more, at least until the end of the season. As you know, when a coach is fired, the team starts to play differently. So those were many of the comments that Michkov had about Tortorella. Now, does that change the overall thoughts on Tortorella? Does that change the thoughts on Tortorella's tenure? Not necessarily. In fairness, a player's not going to bury the coach on the way out. A 20-year-old who just wrapped up his first season in the NHL isn't going to bury the coach. And he might have actually enjoyed playing for Tortorella to some extent. If you are a player who does like straightforward communication, the one thing that you have to say about Tortorella, whether you're a huge fan of him or you are a huge detractor, is that you never have to wonder how John Tortorella feels about a player in any given moment. So if you're a player who's willing and able to accept that criticism and take that criticism and meet it head on, like Michkov appears to be, you're probably fine with the guy. And if not, then you're probably not. Now, again, does it change the view of how things went here, especially in the final season, especially in the final month or the final weeks? No, it doesn't change it at all. While one player, Michkov, might have enjoyed playing for Tortorella or have enjoyed that communication, based on what we have heard and based on some of the things that came out around Tortorella's firing, there were players on the team who did not feel that way. And in fairness, Michkov was not here last year to go through the benching of Sean Couturier. Would Michkov, had he been over here at age 17 going on 18, right? Because he was 19 going on to, if he had come over here at age 18, turning 19 as a rookie, and watched his captain get benched the way that Couturier did the year before, would he have felt the same way? Hard to say. So if you weren't around for a thing that definitely caused a legitimate chasm between the coach and the locker room, it might be easier to look at the vacuum of this one season and say, no, I like how I was coached. I reacted well to it. I didn't like it in the moment. He is a hothead. I'm a hothead. We could talk it out. If you weren't here for the part that really caused a very big issue within that locker room, maybe it's easier to kind of look at it that way. But for the players who were here through the Couturier benching last year, I don't think there was any way to kind of reconcile things and make them better. Let's see. Tony Louis says, Michkov said the same thing in his exit interview. He said it was very good to play with a coach with that much experience, and I learned a lot from him. Paraphrasing. But that he was a good resource. Note that he said that he would have liked to have finished out the season with the coach, which is fine. Listen, Tortorella, whether you like him or not, is still a good coach and can still get a lot out of guys. And in fairness, that's part of the problem from a year ago, is that he got too much out of a team that really wasn't that talented, and it prevented them from picking somebody that maybe had higher upside. Now, Jet Lashenko might still prove to be a very good player. Is he going to be a Zeev who's getting playoff minutes, playing on the blue line for Minnesota? No. But could Lashenko end up being something special? Maybe. Will we ever know? No, we won't. We won't ever know what the Flyers could have done if they had maybe picked higher and had the opportunity to get a guy like Ivan Demidov. I don't know. Never going to let that one go. Anyway, that's where we're going to end for today. Friday, I will be back. I need to double check the schedule. I think Friday's show is going to be later in the day. I have some things going on at home, some things that I'm very excited about, but are probably going to push the show from being in the 8:30 time slot. We haven't done the show at 8:30 in a week and a half now, or 2 weeks. But At some point, we'll probably go back to doing the mornings, or at least sometimes. So Friday's show is a TBD on the time. It might be noonish. It might be a little bit later. I'll keep you posted. But thanks for joining me today. JH says, great show, Russ. Thank you. Thank you, JH. But do me a favor if you haven't done so already. Like the video, share the video, subscribe. I know that I talked about the subscriber number to the channel the other day. It has since gone up, which is great. We're currently sitting, as of right now, 957 subscribers. I'm going to get to 1,000. We called it the run to 1,000. 43 subscribers away. So if you've been watching this show for a while, or you listen in the podcast feed, or it's your first time here and you want to help a guy out, like the video like Zacho says, and please, hit subscribe. Getting to 1,000 would be really, really cool. I'd feel really good about that. And Video Guy Amadeo, as a personal pride for him, building up that TikTok account, getting closer to 1,000 over there. So we're getting there. Slowly but surely, we're getting there. 43 more subscribers to get to 1,000. Can we get to 1,000 by Friday? Could it happen? Maybe. We'll be talking about the draft. We will reflect on Howie Roseman's movements in the first round on Friday. And we'll get to a whole bunch of other stuff. It sounds like, Strom has just entered the game. I've not been paying attention to the Phillies game over on this screen. Let's hope the Phillies rebound here. Let's hope they walk away with a win in this game against the Mets. I have no idea if it's going to happen. Ryan Reese says goodbye, and I think it is time to say goodbye. Thank you, everybody, for watching, maybe even listening to the Russ Joy Show. Until next time, I've been Russ Joy, but you knew that already because you're smart, and it's also the name of the show. Talk to all of you Friday here on the Russ Joy Show. Have a wonderful Wednesday, everybody. Talk to you soon.